We are back. Today, we're talking about Wide Guard, the best move in Regulation G. Well, I mean, like, the best move is probably actually, like, Astral Barrage or Glacial Lance, but this is the next best move because it's learned by a lot of Pokemon. It's important for beating basically every restricted, and I'm going to be very blunt with you. The reason is because almost every relevant restricted has a busted spread move. Calyrex Ice has Glacial Lance, Calyrex Shadow has Astral Barrage, Groudon has Precipice Blades, Kyogre has Water Spout and Origin Pulse, Expanding Force on every Psychic Legendary. Terrapagos, of course, has Stellar Starstorm, Terra Starstorm, that's what it is. And Zamazenta, of course, has Snarl. But yeah, we're going to talk about Wide Guard, why it's the most important move in the game right now, and go over some notable Wide Guard users that you can possibly think about putting onto your team. If you guys enjoy, leave a like, subscribe, turn notifications. I am alone today. I'm very alone. Been trying to meet some new people, but I'm still alone. No. But yeah. Also, if you think you're subbed, double check. You're probably just coming from my other channel. I'd really appreciate you subscribing to this channel. Anyways, let's do this. This channel is partnered with Gamersupps. If you want to support my work and get great tasting drinks, you can order Gamersupps through my link in the description down below or with code Moxie boosted at checkout for 10% off. Gamersupps is a caffeinated product that I recommend only to my 18+ viewers, but my link will send you to their caffeine-free product section just in case. Every product purchased through my link supports my channel financially, so I'd really appreciate the support. Now back to the video. So, Mienshao and Pelipper. I'd say these two are the top Wide Guard users in the format right now, and we're just going to go through each one and like explain what scenario you use them in and why they're succeeding. So Mienshao is notable because of its access to Inner Focus, the ability to run the Focus Sash item very well. Terra Steel is actually pretty good for it, and it's good in like Gen Pound stuff. But it has access to Fake Out, Close Combat. Wide Guard is essential, and the last move can be a few things. I like U-Turn personally. I think U-Turn's actually a phenomenal move for it. It's great if you have like a Trick Room option in your team, but Feint is also quite good for Breaking Protect and also as a priority option. There are also some weird things, Helping Hand, Helping Hand, Knock Off, I don't know, Taunt is also pretty good, but for the most part, it's going to be like Feint or U-Turn. So I'm going to go with U-Turn for my example, but basically, Mienshao serves as almost exclusively a Pokemon for Calyrex Shadow Rider. Now, the reason is Calyrex Shadow Rider is actually pretty weak to Incineroar, and if we actually take a look at Mienshao on usage, we can see where it's being applied in tournaments. As you can see, Mienshao is being used next to... Oh my god, there was no Cali Shadow Mienshao? That's insane. Oh well, point is, it's almost exclusively for Cali Shadow. That's the funny thing, that there was no Cali Shadow Mienshao in this tournament. But there was one. We have this guy. But basically, what Mienshao is able to do is remove Incineroar from the game immediately, because Inner Focus is going to make it immune to Intimidate and to Flinch, meaning that Incineroar, unless it's calced to live the close combat, which it can do pretty easily, actually. It's going to have to sacrifice some special defense to do that, but it is going to be able to invest enough to live that close combat. If they're not, though, close combat is a clean one-shot on a non-terrored Incineroar, allowing for you to remove the biggest check to your Calyrex, your, whatever it is that is weak to Incineroar on your team. There's a few things. Calyrex Ice Rider obviously doesn't appreciate Incineroar. Zacian doesn't appreciate Incineroar. But yeah, beyond that, it's also a fairly high speed tier Pokemon, meaning that you'll have priority over Incineroar and Rillaboom on Fake Out. You're going to outspeed a decent amount of Ogerpon, meaning that you can U-turn on them and you can go for close combat. And also, just like its damage output is pretty good. If we look at like the, let's pull up the Nerd of Now damage calculator. If it would load here. So if we pull up Mienshao and we just use that's Mienfu, and we just use like standard Mienshao into, let's say, Kyogre, right? Close combat is a 2-hit KO, and with your Sash, that means you're able to reliably do that. That's because, close combat's a 120 base power move coming off a 125 base attack. Mienshao is able to just do work. It's a pretty good mon. Pelipper, we're going to be a little bit quicker explaining the use case for this guy, and that's mainly just because we did a whole video on it yesterday, just kind of absolutely glazing that Pokemon. Pelipper is really, 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 really solid right now. But pull up Pelipper usage, we can see Pelipper has a number of great partners. Zamazenta and Zacian, I think, are the two best partners it has going for it. But it can also pair very well with Calyrex Ice Rider, which is very scary, Calyrex Shadow Rider. Any team that needs Wide Guard, Pelipper is an option. So, what does Pelipper do differently than Mienshao? Well, once again, Pelipper is typically running the Focus Sash, although we have seen some Life Orb Pelipper and Safety Goggles Pelipper, but Sash is pretty reliable. It also has Drizzle. Drizzle is notable because Koraidon is a phenomenal Pokemon in the metagame right now. It sets up Sun, giving Photosynthesis to the Paradox Pokemon, and it's going to reduce the damage of fire moves and stuff, and make it so your Hurricanes are less accurate. Drizzle being able to remove not only the Sun, but also the Proto Boost on Koraidon's partners, and technically the Orichalcum Pulse boost on Koraidon itself. It's going to cut that damage quite a bit. It has access to Wide Guard, 100% accurate Hurricane in the rain, and Weather Ball is a absolute nuke coming off this thing. Typically, most of these guys are just gonna be like max, modest for the most amount of damage they can get out of these things. And then the last move is either going to be Protect, because you want to be able to bait out fake outs and stuff and make sure that you keep your Pelipper alive. Or I'm a big fan of Tailwind, because Tailwind allows for your Pokemon like partner. Let's say that like you have a Zacian, right? And there is a Spectrier on the other, not Spectrier, a Calyrex Shadow Rider on the other side of the field that's at +1, so it's threatening a KO on your Zacian, but it is kind of scared of the Pelipper, so they take that turn to target the Pelipper, so because they don't want to get wide guarded on. So they take that turn to try to KO the Pelipper, but you're Sash, so you get the Tailwind off. Next turn, you don't have to play any 50-50s. Your Zacian is faster. You can go ahead and just click the attack into it. So that is very, very nice. I think Pelipper is a solid Pokemon for that reason. It does also have some other niche options that you could try to tack on there over Tailwind. You know, Helping Hand is technically something you can do. U-Turn is technically something you can do. But for the most part, it's going to be either Protect or Tailwind on this guy. And of course, it's like water typing is phenomenal. It's going to allow you to take neutral damage from Calyrex Ice Rider, meaning that Pelipper, despite, you know, having a pretty low HP stat, if we like use like a bulkier one into Calyrex Ice Rider, you can see that Glacial Lance is a 2-hit KO. Which is really nice because that move is extremely busted. And if they want to go for like Terra Ice, or if they're at like +1, you're still going to be living that. So that's going to allow you to click like a Weather Ball or a Hurricane into it to try to deal as much damage as you can. So that's great. Pelipper, phenomenal Pokemon. Araquanid is, I would argue, I don't know. The rest of these guys, these are going to be fringe use cases for Wide Guard, except Lunala. Lunala is like the only restricted I think you should run Wide Guard on. And I'm going to talk about Zamazenta in a minute. But I think that Wide Guard's a waste on Zam. So, Araquanid, right? It has a couple of things going for it. Water Bubble's insane damage, and it's going to make you immune to burns and stuff, make your liquidations hit like a truck. But, you know, it also has access to Wide Guard. It can run Leech Life. And honestly, every other move on this thing's moveset is kind of just filler. It's Liquidation and Wide Guard. Every other move is just like, I need to put something here or I'm technically throwing, right? It's just that sort of Pokemon. We'll go with Protect, who cares? So, what Araquanid's able to do here is run a fairly bulky set while still having very high damage output. Let's say that you just do like max with like 4 defense and a Brave Nature, 0 speed, so you're underspeeding Calyrex Ice Rider, right? So into that, if you are using a Araquanid, let's go with Clear Amulet, TR, offense, whatever. So Brave Liquidation is going to be doing 36 to 43% to a Calyrex Ice Rider. And, you know, that is a guaranteed 3-hit KO. But because you're so bulky, Glacial Lance is going to be a chance to 3-hit KO, which means that under Trick Room, there's a solid chance you live that exchange. Beyond that, it is one of few Pokemon that can actually resist both of Calyrex Ice Rider's moves, which are Glacial Lance and High Horsepower, while still having the option to Wide Guard for partners. That is very, very nice for it. Other positive matchups it has is actually into Calyrex Shadow Rider because of that massive special defense stat. If we take a look, it's, you know, you max out that HP, then that 132 SPDF, that's nothing to scoff at. Taking a look at Calyrex Ice Rider, even the Life Orb set Astral Barrage, even though it's a guaranteed 2-hit KO, you can actually adjust your spread a little bit and get it to the point where you're going to be able to have a solid chance to live 2 of those, or even if you want to run like a Sassy Nature or something, you can basically guarantee that you live 3 of those. Or not 3 of those, 2 of those. Like this, right? And the reason you don't want to go AV on this guy is because wide guard's just that good. Like, you basically need wide guard to get what you need to do. You know, it's important to it's important to the team that you're able to block these spread moves in this metagame. So yeah, Araquanid, very solid. I think you kind of have to run safety goggles, and that's mainly because into like Cali Ice teams, they typically have something like a Mungus on the team to spore you or rage powder you, and being able to just ignore that outright is going to be super solid for you, just making sure that you're able to get what you need done. Hitmontop is one that I think is a little, how do I explain it? Hitmontop's a Pokemon with extremely high potential. It's a very solid Pokemon on paper. But the issue arises that it seems that Hitmontop just doesn't get enough done in a lot of situations despite having all these tools. And it could be the low attack, it could be the only okay bulk, you know, 50 HP makes those defenses seem a little bit worse. But I think mostly it's just like the Intimidate weakness. You have Intimidate yourself. That's the big thing separating it from other wide guard Pokemon. But being weak to Intimidate can be annoying, and also unlike Mienshao, you're not immune to Fake Out. So like typically these guys will run, I don't know, like Citrus Berry is a solid option on this guy to get as much longevity as you can. But you're gonna run Fake Out, Wide Guard, Feint is solid, and like your last move is basically gonna have to be close combat. So it's almost like it's basically just slower Intimidate, bulkier Mienshao. And that can be okay in some situations, but you're gonna have to like experiment with the EV spread. I was actually considering running Hitmontop myself because I thought it would be solid for my team. But I just feel that Intimidate isn't useful enough in this format. And the main reason is that if we take a look at like, you know, the best physical restricteds, they're almost all running Clear Amulet. Like Calyrex Ice Rider, if we take a look at it, what's this Calyrex running? Ooh, I wonder. Oh, that's Clear Amulet. If we look at the next Calyrex Ice Rider, ooh, what is it running? Oh, take a look at it. It's Clear Amulet. That's like, you know, really good for it. The next physical restricted would be Groudon. Oh, what are you running? Let's take a look at it. Oh, yep, no, that's Clear Amulet. Okay. Let's take a look at Koraidon. What are you running in your Koraidon? This one might not be, by the way. Nope, this one's Clear Amulet. Physical restricteds love Clear Amulet. It's a really solid option for it. And like the only physical restricteds that don't really run Clear Amulet are going to be Zacian, which runs Swords Dance anyways and has +1 on switching, and the main reason it's not running Clear Amulet is because it can't. And Zamazenta, which could care less about getting intimidated because Zamazenta uses its defense to attack with Body Press. So while Hitmontop does have the utility of Intimidate, it just seems that that ability isn't as good as it used to be. And let's say you're facing like a Calyrex Ice Rider, you're gonna have to be scared of expanding force and stuff. And it does take a significant amount of special defense investment to not get 2-hit KO'd by Life Orb Astral Barrage, if you can even guarantee it. You can't even guarantee it unless they're Sash, which, let's take a look. Go with that. Astral Barrage, yeah. Like, you have to be facing Sash, and you have to go Sassy with solid amount of Spit F here. Yeah, 172. You know, that will allow you to invest in your defense a little bit more, and then, you know, a little bit in attack, but it just seems that Hitmontop doesn't get a lot done. It's a little bit of a strange Pokemon, but it does have a lot of cool options. You know, it has Coaching, has Bullet Punch in case, you know, you're facing Terra Fairy Calyrex, I guess. Sucker Punch is also an option, Triple Axle. Quick Guard could be interesting, but I don't see it really pulling its weight. It's, I don't know. It's got a lot going for it, but it just doesn't do anything, you know? It's like if Batman had his utility belt, but he didn't, like, practice Kung Fu. He just isn't really getting anything done with all those tools. Gallade. This one's basically exclusively a hard Trick Room option. You don't really see a lot of Gallade outside of hard Trick Room, and I'm actually curious if there was any Gallade in this. Yeah, there was one, or there were two Gallades? Here. So two Gallades, we can see they're both on, not necessarily hard Trick Room teams, but teams that have a Trick Room option. I would argue that this is a hard Trick Room team just with an Ogerpon on it, and that this one is kind of hard Trick Room. Like, most of their mons are, like, they have a hard Trick Room mode is the best way to put it. You know, they have Gallade, Indeedee, Blood Moon Ursaluna, and then like Calyrex Shadow Rider in the back. Like, that's like an option. But yeah, so Gallade, Not only is it a solid wide guard Pokemon, but it also really likes the Clear Amulet. And with Sharpness, it's able to deal out a ton of damage. Oh my god. This is one of the most annoying Pokemon to deal with because it is another answer to Incineroar. While you can be faked out, most of the time you're going to have an Indeedee next to you, so you don't really care. But Sacred Sword is basically a guaranteed one-shot in Incineroar due to it being not 90, but because Sharpness is a 50% increase. That is 90 plus 45. That is a 135 base power fighting type move that ignores any stat changes in the opponent, which means it's also technically a Zamazenta counter. I actually don't know if you one-shot it. I'm pretty curious. So, Gallade. Let's go with the Trick Room Clear Amulet versus Zamazenta. There goes Body Press. We can see that the Sacred Sword is 76 to 90%. Very solid option to this guy. So that is really cool. You run Wide Guard, you run Trick Room, and then your last move, you know, it can be Protect, or usually it's going to be Psycho Cut because that move just does so much damage. Night Slash is also an option. Do you get Leaf Blade? I doubt you get Leaf Blade. You do get Leaf Blade, but no, it's probably not the best for this format. Psycho Cut, very good because of just the sheer damage output. But this guy is almost exclusively going to be a hard Trick Room Wide Guarder. So if you are running like, you know, a Blood Moon Ursaluna, Indeedee, even next to like Calyrex Ice, you know, this is an option because you have 2 Trick Room setters while also having Wide Guard as an option. This guy's very solid. I like him a lot. I hate facing him, but I like him a lot. Okay, we'll talk about these guys before we talk about any of the restricted Wide Guard users. And that's just because I just don't... The restricted ones are going to be interesting. All right, so Armarouge is similar to Gallade in that it is almost exclusively a hard Trick Room Wide Guard user. You know, you have Wide Guard, you have Trick Room. Next to Indeedee, you have Expanding Force, and of course, you can use Armor Cannon to make sure you don't get walled out. You don't get walled out by opposing Wide Guard. And he's pretty self-explanatory. Most of what I said with Gallade applies to Armarouge in that it's just going to be Indeedee plus Trick Room, and then you go on the offense. But where Gallade is like a physical Wide Guarder, Armarouge is a special Wide Guarder, so keep that in mind. Not Gallade, but Iron Valiant is probably going to be the worst Wide Guarder on this list next to Zamazenta, and I'll talk about why Zamazenta is a bad Wide Guarder in a second. But it's mainly because Iron Valiant is really only going to be useful on like Miraidon teams, I think. And even that's like sort of iffy because Miraidon might not even want to have a Quark Drive user next to it sometimes. But yeah, so, you know, you could run like Booster Energy or something, and you have access to some pretty solid support options. You have Spirit Break for damage reduction, but of course, you know, Wide Guard. I've seen Destiny Bond. I've seen Encore Disable. Like, this guy's actually fairly scary. Icy Wind for speed control. He's kind of like... How do I explain it? It's kind of like Hitmontop, right? Hitmontop's like got a ton of utility to it, but it doesn't get much done and it's slow. Where Iron Valiant has a ton of utility to it, but it doesn't get much done and it's really fast. So that is really cool. But it is, you know... It's actually got pretty okay defenses, but it's not as bulky as Hitmontop was. But it does have really good offenses. You know, you still have access to Moonblast and Aura Sphere, I guess, but usually you run like close combat or something. And Spirit Break because you really want that damage decrease against Pokemon like Kyogre. Let's say that you're gonna predict them to call your Wide Guard out and go for an Ice Beam instead. That will allow you to Spirit Break, reduce the damage, and then actually just, you know, ruin their day a little bit. Also, it is a solid answer into Incineroar since you are a Fairy Fighting type with access to close combat. You might get intimidated, but it is coming off of base 130, so it is pretty strong. Lunala. This one's interesting. I think that the only good Lunala set is the Meteor Beam set, which, not Meteor Beam in the item, Power Herb in the item. This guy runs Meteor Beam, Trick Room, Moongeist Beam, and of course, Wide Guard. Actually, I'm really curious. Does the Cross with Dawnwings get Wide Guard? No, and that's why we don't run it. Okay, so Lunala is interesting in that it is a soft Trick Room Pokemon. It has Trick Room as an option, which is nice for its partners, but it is fairly fast. So it setting up Trick Room is a very conscious decision and not just it's not game plan number one. But yeah, so Lunala is going to be able to be very bulky and eat a hit because of Shadow Shield. And while usually I would say if you have a restricted that can run Wide Guard, you shouldn't do it, Lunala's not really begging for any other moves. Moongeist Beam and Meteor Beam are very solid. Meteor Beam allows you to one-shot opposing Incineroar in a lot of situations. And then once the Incineroar is gone and they have like no normal types, Lunala's going to be able to spam Moongeist Beam at +1 for some really insane damage. Coming off a base 137 special attack, that Moongeist Beam is absolutely a nuke. Wide Guard is going to allow you to, if you have a Trick Room setter next to your Lunala, you're going to be able to Wide Guard for the Trick Room setter and then get off the Trick Room and then Meteor Beam sweep. That is an option. But yeah, the only reason Lunala can really get away with it is because Lunala is one of the few Pokemon in the game that has like the opposite of 4 move slot syndrome. It just kind of knows what it wants every single time, and it's basically this. Zamazenta, on the other hand, if you're running Wide Guard, that is legitimately a throw. And the main reason is because Zamazenta, its absolute best moveset at the moment is going to be Iron Defense, Body Press, Protect, and Behemoth Bash. You want Protect. You basically need Protect because playing Zamazenta is like playing Defend the King, you know, keep him safe. Because Zamazenta has a few very, very obvious checks to it. Landorus Incarnate is one of them. Chi-Yu is one of them. A special attacker with a choice specs and like Terra, like, you know, Terra Fairy Fluttermane is technically one of the checks if they're like modest max special attack. You know, there are ways to one-shot Zamazenta Crowned. So you need to be able to specifically protect Zamazenta. Throwing Wide Guard on here will make it so it's much easier to like focus down this mon, get rid of it, and then your team falls apart because Zamazenta is very much a protect the president type of Pokemon, you know? What Zamazenta would much rather do than run Wide Guard itself is have Protect and have a Wide Guard partner. Whether that be in Araquanid, it's usually going to be Pelipper, or anything else, Zam should definitely not be running Wide Guard right now. And that's just a fact. You know, you need Iron Defense, Body Press, and you need Behemoth Bash to make sure you don't get KO'd by, or to make sure you don't get walled out by like ghost types and stuff. And Protect, you need to be able to make sure you don't lose the best Pokemon on your team. So yeah, that is the video. I just smacked my microphone. Tomorrow, I'm hoping it's gonna be tomorrow, we're gonna go in depth on Zamazenta and talk about why it is a top tier. And if you have any more topics you want me to cover, you know, make sure you comment them down below. I'll try to get a video out about them. And once I start streaming, we're going to have basically 2 videos daily here. We're going to have like a video just talking about the current state of the metagame or whatever. And also just a highlight from my battle stream. So battle stream highlights will go up in the morning. These will go up in the afternoon. If you enjoyed, leave a like, subscribe, turn notifications. Make sure you're subscribed. You're definitely not. We get like 12,000 views on these videos, but I have 8,000 subs. So I know for a fact a lot of you guys aren't subbed. So make sure you do that. Thank you so much, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.